Hello and welcome to VeloFit Podcast. This is my second time doing a podcast in English, so already now, sorry for my English or Dinglish or what we call it, but I'm really happy to be back, and especially because now I have the chance to bring in a super geeky guy. Today we're going to talk to Lennart Klein from MNSTRY Energy, I've been really looking forward to this conversation because, I'm using the products in past racing, and they are about to launch a new product, which I've been testing for the last month and a half. Much more about that very, very soon. Lennart, first of all, welcome. I will give you the word in a second. I'll just introduce the agenda. Before Lennart is getting the word and introduce himself, today we're going to talk a bit about MNSTRY and the past racing relationship. We will also talk in generally about MNSTRY and their philosophy about creating the best energy brand on the market. They do it a little bit differently from many else out there, which Lennart will explain in a second. And then we're going to go into a bit deeper dive about energy in general, but also for sure the bicarbonate, which is for sure a big thing. So a long introduction, but welcome, Lennart. Can you start telling us a bit about yourself? How did you come into MNSTRY?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. Also interesting that you call it the Denglish as well in Denmark, because in Germany we also call it Denglish. Okay. So I hope my Denglish is also not too bad. Where should I start? As you say, my name is Lennart Klein. I work as the head of marketing at MNSTRY. I've been here for, let's say, 3 years now. The whole company has been around for about 5 years. So I joined very, very early. And actually, I think I was officially the first real employee as an office job for MNSTRY 2 years ago. And since then, we started the big challenge of building a brand in a kind of highly competitive market. But I'm happy to say that we are lucky enough to have a product that has a USP and stands apart a little bit, which makes life a lot easier, or my job a little bit easier in this very noisy market. And I'm super looking forward to going into some rabbit holes with you. As you say, I'm really interested in sports science. Always have been interested in cycling. I've spent ages on pro cycling stats. So I hope we don't go too deep into any rabbit holes.
No, but we have the chance now. This is a podcast, so we have plenty of time to actually bury ourselves into a rabbit hole, as you say. But Lennart, as I remember, you also a quite good bike rider. You do ride quite a bit yourself.
Well, quite good. I do criteriums. I would say I'm pretty specialized in what I do. So I have a very high VLA max. And if the VO2 max isn't there, then having a high VLA max is kind of painful. But if the VO2 max is there especially for the crits that I do, it's local crit racing, so it was never on a professional level. But in Germany, it's the highest elite level in the crit area. So it's a 1K course, normally 80 laps. So that's what I can do pretty well when I'm in shape. But now I'm feeling age creeping in, or just less training volume. And the young kids out there, it's just amazing to see. They are so much stronger. They just come from a background of high level training, nutrition, everything from the age of, let's say, 10. Whereas, without finding excuses, but I had my first power meter at the age of 19 or 20. Did the whole stupid stuff that everybody did with not fueling properly on the bike, doing 5-hour rides with maybe 1 bar max and water in the bottle. So you can really feel that this new generation, you see it on the World Tour level, you see it also in the local crits. It's just amazing how strong these people are. Now I can really feel if you don't have the time to put into training, then it gets pretty hard. So
Yeah.
I'm phasing it out a little bit, I would say.
Okay, but I totally agree with you, because like all the knowledge is so much more available. So the younger generation don't need to do the same like huge mistakes as we've been doing.
Totally.
I recognize what you're telling about, like 5 hours ride on water and just really trying to starve yourself, and just like you feel like you're doing a really, really big effort, but the outcome is just like not there. So
it's not there. It's minor, and then you can do maybe one thing. You can do this, maybe say zone 2 medium, but the explosivity just wasn't there for me in that period of time. And like I used to come back from a training camp and be super dead, have 2 or 3 rest days, and then have a really good day where I could feel like I could open the gas as much as I wanted until, let's say, a threshold or a little bit above. But everything else was just not there. And in hindsight, it's just like you go really low in terms of carbs and put your body into a hole, and then you refill for 2 days, and then you kind of have the energy again.
Yeah.
But it's a different sport now, I would say.
Definitely, yeah. Well, I just been listening a little bit to Jack Burke, how to become a pro cyclist.
Funny that you mentioned him. He was on Leopard, where I was the sports director for some years, and actually, Jack's super funny, super cool guy.
Good storyteller, also.
Good storyteller. We kind of found him when he was on Jelly Belly, continental team in the US, and he did a good job, I think, in the Tour of Colorado. And I was responsible for the scouting on Leopard, so we brought him in for the next year for his first European season. And I have this really funny story about him. So, well, Jack always, we can see on Training Peaks already that he does the same rides every time. And he just goes to a mountain in Canada. He goes 4 hours there. He does his intervals there and goes 4 hours back, no matter what the weather is, freezing cold in the night. So he comes to Europe. We have our first training camp on Mallorca, and we do, I think, 4 hours. Everybody's then back in the hotel, and at dinner time, everybody's, where's Jack? So he just vanished. We found his bike missing. So he took his bike again, started riding and did another 3 hours, and set a new 30-minute or 60-minute PB. So that's kind of Jack in a nutshell. He just loves riding his bike so much. Super, super strong. The adaptation to the racing was tricky for him. That's, I think, why on like, let's say on a UCR level, sometimes it's hard. He had some good results, but not really constantly up there. But really funny guy.
He's a crazy guy. Like also, the numbers he's putting out, like doing KOMs or on all kind of like crazy mountains. But one thing is numbers. A totally different thing is racing. Like
that's. I totally agree.
Anyway, he was also like talking about like this knowledge who's available now, and like people are getting younger. You see Del Toro in the Giro right now, 21 years. Like he's riding as he's been like doing this for 100 years. It's really impressive.
Yeah.
Anyway, so tell me a bit about how did you guys got involved with the PAS racing team, the gravel team I'm racing at?
Good question how it really started. I think back last year at the Trucker 2023, we had made contact with some riders from the team and sent out one of our tasting boxes. And the feedback that we got back was like really, really positive. And in the end, I think I got an email from Lars Moss saying like, hey, we got some amazing feedback about the products from our riders. Would you be interested in working with us? And for us, it was super cool just because there is a really, really good fit with fast racing, but also with gravel racing in general, because like the need for our product is just so much there in gravel racing, which is 5, 6, 7, 8, or even 10, 13 hours long. And where your stomach really has to be able to tolerate a lot of product. So because tolerability or digestibility is one of our key focus points, it's just a really good match. That's kind of how it started. We sent some more test products to the team and then met with Lars and Toby Kongstad later on in the season. And then from there on, I think everything really started.
Cool. You also are you still involved with BORA-Hansgrohe?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So on the road side, we work with Red Bull BORA-Hansgrohe, Tudor Pro Cycling, and Unibet Titema Rockets. That's the men's side. On the women's side, we work with Canyon SRAM, Zonda Crypto since this year, and I think for 3 years with Ceratisit WMT. It all started with Bora actually, because our product developer and co-founder Robert was the head of nutrition there for I think 8 years, from 2016 on till 2024. So that's kind of where everything really started, building the first products with them.
Yeah. Cool. Can you talk a bit about so your philosophy? How is your approach to like creating energy, making sure that the stomach, the fueling, and so on is happy?
Yeah. The main thing is we want to have healthy athletes for a long time. So we really pay attention to the microbiome. And really want to create products that are, first of all, science-backed, so state-of-the-art science in terms of sports nutrition, but we only use natural ingredients. So we stay away from artificial flavoring, artificial stabilizers, everything, because these things tend to be really the substances that upset the stomach and the digestive system, and especially in long term, it can really affect the microbiome, which is responsible for health and overall well-being. So we really believe in long term, like performance is long term for us. It's not only on the day, that's what we can tick off with modern sports science, but also in the long term, the athlete is healthy, motivated to train. So that's a big factor for us. And we found that there hasn't been a brand on the market that really pays attention to this factor. So Robert, the product developer, who was always looking for new products on Bora that days, he said, like, I think we might have to create something different. And he really wanted to create a product that he would be able to use the rest of his life with a really good feeling that he's not really sacrificing his health.
That makes sense, totally. Also, I remember when we were having this talk like earlier this season in February in Girona and Santa Value, we were doing like a bigger presentation. You were also talking about how it's not affecting your teeth so much, because like having this sugar thing in your mouth for several hours, day after day, is not really healthy for your mouth as well.
Exactly. That's something that you always have to pay attention to, is like the pH that the drink mixes have. So we try and keep them in a very neutral area. So everything that is below, I think 5.8 or 5.7, I would have to look it up, is kind of acidy. So this kind of, if you consume a lot, it harms your teeth. But if you keep it very close to, let's say, over 6 and going towards 7, that's when it's neutral in pH, and that's when it doesn't really affect your teeth. So we got the feedback, I think, after the first season with Bora, when we officially partnered with them. They were like, we noticed at the end of a Grand Tour, we had less dental problems, because me personally, I've never ridden that much in that short period of time, but I guess if you have 21 days and you consume up to like 600 grams of carbs a day, then that's a lot, and then your dentist might be pretty unhappy with the result after the 3 weeks in France. So that was an interesting factor for me as well when I really first talked to the riders to hear that feedback. They actually noticed it.
Yeah, but I also think that this is a thing about your immune system and your health in general, because like having a healthy mouth and teeth, infection there, it could be really critical and can keep people out. Like we all suffer a little bit from pain in a tooth once in a while, and it's like you can't really ride your bike, and it's just like super annoying.
Yeah. So it's kind of like we try to take out all these minimal factors that could keep you off your bike, like health-wise, teeth, like immune system, whatever. I think there is also some interesting studies of that the microbiome influences the overall motivation. So if you have a case of an athlete that is more motivated just by, let's say, 2%, you already have a benefit. So everything, back in the day, Sky called it marginal gains, but it could be kind of the marginal gains of the nutrition side, where you kind of add up a little bit here and there, and then you have a product that is overall, as we think, a little bit better than the rest of the market.
Yeah, well, it makes totally sense that the stomach also, the nickname is also the second brain. So
exactly,
the stomach is happy. Well, again, if you have stomach pain or you need to go too often to the bathroom leading up to a training ride or a competition, well, you are, well, motivation for sure, but just like being balanced is a really, really Andreas, it's a really, really key thing for sure. So, well, normally when you are taking all the I would say the greasy stuff, talking about like artificial flavor and so on, taking this out of the product, normally the how long the product will last and so on, how it will taste and how it will act in different conditions and like heat and cold and so on. Can you say anything about that? Because so far I've been raising them or using your products since New Year, and I've been really, really, really happy about them, especially because normally if I can have a lot of like products during a tough ride or competition, having no stomach issues at all, and really feel that this is delivering energy. This is really a thing, and it makes a big difference out there. I'm pretty happy then. But I might consume like more gels, more drink mix than average. So my gels would not be in the drawer for too long. I will eat them, but. Are there anything you should be like worried about?
No, I'm not worried about it. So there's definitely a challenge if you keep all these artificial things out. I mean, they make sense for the food industry, of course, to make things good for a longer time. But we have our drink mixes. You can use them for 2 years. The bars for 1 year and the gels for 1 year. So we managed to get them to a point where they are usable for a long enough period of time that they actually make sense as a product. But in general, as you say, there's of course you face some challenges building a product if you stay away from the artificial things. And it's in our case, it's a big benefit, I would say, taste-wise. So you say like, if you have a product, you design it differently if you're MNSTRY, because you start with, let's say, what kind of fruit powder goes into our drink mix, and this defines what the next steps are. So then you have to analyze the fruit powder and see, okay, how many electrolytes are in there, and then you just have to add a little bit. Whereas if you just come with artificial flavoring, you just mix in the exact amount of electrolytes and carb mix, like the ratio fructose to glucose, and then you add the flavoring and that's it. But we always have to see what the fruit powder does first, so to say, and then we add the right amount of what is needed to actually arrive at the same goal. So let's say 1 to 0.8 ratio or 2 to 1 ratio with 200 milligrams of sodium. But it's just, for us, it starts with a natural ingredient. And that also defines the product a little bit.
Well, and it makes totally sense. What I really enjoy about your product is like it has a super good taste, but it's not like a strong taste. So you can actually, it's very mild. So you can actually you taste the mango, you taste the apple or whatever you have in, but it's just it's a mild taste. So it's not like you really need to like use water to clear your mouth afterwards. Which also, it's really, really important, because like if you are having a gel and you also need to clear your water with your mouth with water afterwards. In a race situation, it can be like kind of chaotic.
You have either or sometimes, and then it's either the gel or the bottle. But having to do both can be complicated. Exactly.
So it's I really like that. So it's not like too sticky or too like greasy in your mouth. It's just like really easy to digest.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like when you first start with a product, it's sometimes like, oh, it tastes really different. And then I find like I've used the product now for 4 years, I would say. I can still eat the porridge bar, which is kind of the original recipe, and that's always a good sign to me. And then like because we also try and see what does the market, what are other brands working on. So if you test other products, I find personally that I taste the sweetener in a drink mix or the artificial stuff a lot more now that I've been used to having mild flavorings, and it's just easier in my opinion again to consume a lot of something that's not too intense, especially if it's really hot or it's really intense. Then your taste seems to be different from, let's say, if you're sitting on your desk. And especially in these situations, you need some things or products that are not too intense in the flavor, so you keep consuming. Because I think the worst thing that can happen, that's what also the pro teams always talk about, is food boredom in a Grand Tour. And they are really happy that we have a big range of products and flavors, so they can keep them happy. Plus, the product is just not so intense that you're kind of fed up with the mango gel after, I don't know, a certain amount of time. And that's also, I mean, the porridge bar and the mango gel. The mango gel is a product that I always recommend to everyone who likes mango as a fruit, because it's just, I could eat it at a desk, which is a good sign. So it's a nice treat. Some of our pro triathletes actually, they add a mango gel to vanilla ice cream as a treat in the summer. So that's also a little geeky tip.
Yeah, well, it makes totally sense. And I think that the variety of like you have like many different flavors, but like common for all of them is like they don't taste that strong. And I totally agree. If you are riding the tracker, for example, and after 5.5 hours you're completely smashed, and it's like 30 degrees, and your bottles are also 30 degrees warm, and if you have like this, it's just really, really important that you are still finding attractive to actually have a sip of your bottle, because if it tastes like shit, you will just like, I'm not in the mood for that.
Actually,
that's also
1 hour later it's over.
Many people are starting like with the drink mix and so on, and after like 3-4 hours, the only thing they can have is water, because they're just like fed up, and that's not a good thing.
No, totally. And then also, I think what plays into that is always like education in terms of products. We try and do that as much as possible. I would really hope to do even more, just general education on topics like carb ratios, osmolarity. Osmolarity is a big thing for me, because I tend to hear like people do, I do 120 grams in one 500 milliliter bottles, but this won't work with any drink mix in the world, just because the amount of particles in the solution is just too high, and the body won't be able to absorb it. Only if you've been drinking a lot of water before the start. But even then, the solution that you put in your body just won't work in terms of absorption. So I think there's so many, how do you say? In German, we say Halbwissen, so half knowledge out there, where people confuse 120 grams per hour with 120 grams per bottle. And then you have all this kind of stuff happening. I think that's also where a lot of these problems come from, but also from like the ingredients sometimes in some products, because we tend to see that there's products that are kind of overloaded with adding some amino acids, adding beta-alanine. So you end up with a product that has kind of no clear function, but 5 different ingredients that could do something, but it's not a clear product for the athlete in that moment. So we really, and that's I'm really happy that a lot of people work at MNSTRY that have some kind of athletic background, even if it's just recreation, but they use the product a lot, because it helps creating a product where you say, we find there is a specific need or a challenge for an athlete, and we can solve it with one clear product. And there's no stuff built around it that's added to the packaging to make it more exciting. It's just a clear product for use for top athletes. So
I'm glad you're actually bringing this up, because some of your products are marked with a heat, and also like an explanation of how many grams you actually supposed to put in a bottle per milliliter. And as you said, it's very common now that because we are hearing it everywhere that you need to consume 90 to 100, maybe up to 120 grams per hour.
Yeah.
But it makes the well if you also having the mixture right, like water and energy, because like just imagine you're like putting in 120 grams of pure powder in your mouth. You will not absorb half of it. It will just be like, So can you talk a bit about like what you do differently? Because like having 40 or 60 grams in a half a liter bottle is not very common. Like more, I know the Pro Tour is doing it, especially in warm condition and so on. But can you say a few words about that?
Yeah, it's as you say, the Pro Tour guys, they tend to go towards 40 grams per bottle, and I think that's the best scenario you can get. But for most of us out there, it's just not an option, because even if you have 2 feed zones in the tracker or one or whatever, you don't have access to that many bottles. Ideally, you always want to carry a lot of fluid. So, for example, Red Bull BORA-Hansgrohe, they do 40 grams per bottle most of the time, and then they just consume more bottles to hit the goal of 120 grams. One interesting thing is that we developed with them is our unit system. So all our products are 1 unit, and 1 unit is 40 grams, except the power carb, which is 2 units. So what they do actually on the bike, they just count units. And they say, okay, we have a unit goal of like 2 or 3 units or 2.5 units per hour. And they just have to hit that, whether it's with a bar, whether it's with a gel or a bottle. They more or less don't care. Of course, they always have to keep an eye on the fluid, but it makes things a little bit easier. And then, as you say, we distinguish between the 40-gram drink mix and an 80-gram drink mix. The 40 gram is the fast carb. The 80 gram is the power carb. And within these drink mixes, again, it sounds a little complicated. And to be honest, it is a little complicated, but you could choose between the carbohydrate ratios, because that's also something that we strongly believe in. There is not the one carbohydrate ratio for everyone. So for you, Thomas, 1 to 0.8, you have a rather high FTP, higher overall energy consumption on the bike. You need to go up to 120 grams. But for most people, actually, I believe that the 2-to-1 ratio is even better, because they only have to go up to 80 or 90 grams. And you can achieve this with the 2-to-1 ratio of glucose to fructose. And it's a bit easier on the stomach because fructose needs water to be absorbed. And the higher that you go with the fructose, the more water you need. So for most of us, if you have a little bit less fructose in a 2-to-1 ratio, it's better. And we don't market our 1 to 0.8 range as the one range, because I think it's highly individual, especially I would say 90% out there don't have to go to 1 to 0.8 ratio. But we really created it for our professional athletes and everybody who's really strong. And there's more, as I said, there's more people who are this strong now because they have an FTP of, 350 or something. But yeah, we don't want to say there's this one ratio for everyone.
So what you're saying, like if you are, if you're having a like quite high FTP, you are like train a lot and so on, you also have or eat a lot of like energy on your bike, so you have the gut training as well. You're very aware about like your fueling, also like hydration. Then you can go up to 120 grams, as you say, and that's the 1 to 0.8 ratio. Exactly. If you go below and you have like a lower FTP, you consume less energy and so on. 2 to 1 is a better solution.
Probably, yes. To go back into the theory, maybe because it's not really clear to everyone how these ratios work. So in the gut, you have 2 transporters for carbohydrates. One is for glucose and one is for fructose. And both tend to be able to take up 60 grams of carbs per hour. If you take fructose and glucose at the same time, there is findings that say the glucose transporter can even go up to 70 grams per hour. So in total, it would be 130. But that seems to be more or less the maximum at the moment. So what you try and do is give a little bit more glucose than fructose with the 1 to 0.8 ratio to completely saturate both these transporters and max them out. But if you don't need 120 grams, because let's say me, I have an FTP. If I'm fit, I would say 285. It's not a lot. So looking at the overall energy burned, I don't think I have to go up to 120. Like 90 to 100 grams would probably also be quite okay for me. If I can go higher, it won't hurt. But I think more or less most people are fine with the 2-to-1 ratio. That's then coming 60 grams of glucose and 30 grams of fructose, 2-to-1 ratio, and then like you should be totally fine. You end up with 90 grams.
Yeah. Well, and then it makes totally sense that when you are, well, it basically comes down to mathematics, like putting out the 300 watts for an hour. That's like 1150 calories. So you need to absorb more energy to get your system going. Yeah. So, and like doing 200 watts for an hour is like 720 kilocalories. So meaning that you need less energy to actually keep on going. That's why FTP also plays a role here.
Exactly, it's relevant, and of course, the main part of it comes through the oxidation of fat. That's totally clear. But also, one interesting finding is that if you go too high with carbohydrates, you also there are studies that say you tend to suppress a little bit your fat metabolism, and that's actually the bigger part of the energy source. So the carbohydrates are, of course, really important, but if you suppress your fat metabolism a little, that's already really hurtful. So for somebody with an FTP of, let's say, 285, again, me, if I go to 120, there is a risk sometimes that I just overload, and in terms of suppressing the fat metabolism a little bit. So I would not really benefit from going really, really high. So it's actually,
It makes totally different. Point with what you're saying, because when you're just looking into, let's say, 100 grams of carbohydrate, that's 385 calories, total. And if you're doing like, let's say, 300 watts for an hour, that's more than 1,000 calories. So meaning that this mathematic question will you will come out at least in 615 calories deficit. Yeah. You need to actually be able to do some fat oxidation, otherwise you'll be screwed. Yeah. You cannot eat the amount of carbohydrates to actually make to make sure that this whole is level. So
exactly,
you will over time deplete so much that you need to slow down and rely more on your fat oxidation.
Yeah, exactly. And therefore, for example, if you do really, really long events like the Unbound XL, or let's say the Tracker Adventure, it's actually what we recommend to athletes is more like 80 grams per hour, even if they're strong, because they are riding in a lower zone, because they're not going to be as close to FTP most of the time, like you guys in the 200 do or the 360. So if they ride in a lower zone, they're really dependent on the fat metabolism. So we're really going to keep that going. So we say 80 grams should be enough for you guys to actually keep the energy levels as high as you need them.
It's funny because I talked to Magnus Barclay from the team, and we talked about Tobias Kongstad, who won the 360. And I'm not putting Tobias under the bus now, but I'm just really impressive of his performance. So actually, I'm clapping his shoulder, meaning that Magnus and Tobias was doing a long 300-kilometer ride 3 weeks before the Tracker.
I think I saw that. Yeah.
And it was insane. It was 37 average speed, crazy. Anyway, where they were going further than 6 hours. Magnus normally would beat Tobias in a 5-6 hour race. So Magnus is just he's phenomenal. Tobias as well. But when you are going further than 6 hours, then Magnus was saying Tobias is just on another planet. He's he's just keep on going. So he might not be the fastest motorbike on the harbor for the first 5 hours,
but he won't stop.
But after 8 hours, he's basically he's not losing speed. So he's doing more or less the same speed in hour 3 as he do in hour 6 as he do in hour 9. That's why he's winning the 360. That's why he's also like a big contender for the unbound.
Yeah. It seems to be a very Danish thing, to be honest. From our German perspective, you Danish guys are always like the big diesels who kind of don't lose. And it's kind of a quality that you always, what I admire is in the World Tour, if you have guys like, Michael Valgren, or Magnus Kort, I think, is one of the guys who does more or less the same 5-minute power after 2,500 or 3,000 calories as fresh. So, and this is kind of also the quality that you need for World Tour racing, especially going into the classics. Like there's a lot of guys who can do, 6.5 watts per kilo for 20 minutes fresh. And that's also what you tend to see with amateurs. They seem to be very close to World Tour level sometimes, or elite riders. But the big difference is, can you do it after 3,000 calories or not? Can you do it 3 days in a row? So that's really, really impressive to have this fatigue resistance. But also a big thing is the fueling. Like, are you able to consume a lot? Are you able to really keep the recovery going also? How quickly can you refill your storage, and how smart do you fuel? So this is it all plays a role in this multifactorial. And I think Tobias is just one guy that nails it for especially these really long races. So I guess that's why he chooses the 360 over the 200, because the 200 again is a slightly different profile in terms of what you need to be doing.
I agree. I have a question in my mind here now. The hydration and the absorption of energy is like really close related. I remember like back in the days when I was, I think I was actually using, I can't remember the name now, another energy brand, but they were like talking about like how much you should actually mix up in your bottles depending on the temperature. And also like how long you're going and so on. But they were like going into this. So can you say something about like temperature, hydration, and energy absorption?
Yeah, it's kind of the topic that we touched on briefly earlier, the osmolarity, the amount of salt particles in one solution. So I always say the carbohydrate can't pass the stomach into the intestine where it's then absorbed without the water. There must be the right amount of water. So if you just, as I say, do 120 gram bottles, you won't have enough water for the carbs actually to go from the stomach to the intestine. And you can kind of counter that with drinking some water before the start. You have already water in there. And then if you have a solution that is more hypertonic, that's more particles, then it kind of is balanced out by the water you already have. And then it kind of works, but it only works to a certain degree. And if you have hot temperatures, of course, you sweat more. So you already lose more water. So there will be less water in the stomach to actually help with the absorption process. So especially in the hot temperatures, always go dilute it a little bit more. Go for a 40 instead of an 80 gram drink, for example. Or maybe even go to a 30 gram drink and then have more bottles. That's what the pro teams do. And you can also see it with their bottle strategy. As I said, like Red Bull BORA-Hansgrohe does 40 grams most of the time. But when it's colder, they tend towards, like in the classics, they sometimes do the 80 gram bottles. Just because it's colder, you need a little bit less water for the absorption. You don't sweat that much. And also in the classics, it's better to have something more dense because you don't know how often you will be able to drink. So if you can take 5 sips per hour, they better be a little bit more concentrated than not. But in the Grand Tour, let's say in the Tour, if it's really hot, if you're on altitude, that's also a factor. Make sure to keep the hydration on a very high level, because otherwise it won't work. You just put the carbs in the stomach, they lay there, and they can't really pass the stomach towards the intestine. And everything that lays a long time in the stomach starts to create this problem because it's not how it's supposed to be.
That's why you sometimes you can actually, even though you've been eating 120 grams for 4 or 5 hours, and you cross the finish line and you feel completely empty. But you realize that you haven't been drinking. We've been drinking like 3 big bottles over 5 hours or 4 hours, way too little.
The rest is just gels, and gels are always hypertonic. So there's actually no gel on the market so far, I think. Maybe there's some gels, but they have less carbs. I think there is an isotonic gel, for example, but then it comes with 20 grams per gel. The gels are always more or less hypertonic. So that's exactly what you say. You've been smashing the gels without the water, and you only have one part of the equation to actually reach the goal that you're looking for.
So that's why when you're then drinking a liter or half a liter of water crossing the finish line, all of a sudden you feel completely energized again.
Exactly.
Like, what's going on? I feel like jumping
Let's
on
do a second race.
It's like I got great legs now.
Exactly.
The sugar bubble in your stomach is like it's released to your intestine and now absorbed. So I could say that I think people are very focused about like having the right amount of carbs on the bike right now, but they are still screwing up the hydration thing.
Exactly.
Meaning that they are not absorbing the energy, and that's why they still after 3-4 hours with 120 grams per hour still feel completely empty.
Yeah, it's a really important point. And it's something we really try to tell people. Even though I would say we're a carbohydrate company, but of course we also do hydration, and there's also a really interesting hydration product coming soon. But please, everybody, focus on getting the fluids in, because without the fluids, you won't be able to maximize the effects.
No, and the mathematic thing about like temperature, sweating rate, intensity, and also like concentration of your carbs. It's just like there's too many variables to actually get your head around. So it's basically learn by doing.
Exactly.
My part of I guess you can read about it and you can test and try, but you need to like try it out there. And if you go for 120 grams and a half a liter of bottles and you feel that the bottle is not working, then something is wrong.
Yeah, 100%. And that's again the point with the education that I mentioned. I would really love to have more focus and more time to educate people, because the more they're educated, the easier they understand our products and how to also combine them. Because we always, as a company, have the balance between making it as easy as possible and easily understand as possible. But you can do so many special things with the products. Also combining, let's say, one product like the slow carb with other drink mixes. You can be really, really creative and effective with it, but it's really hard to break it down on a very simple level. So with all the different carbohydrate ratios and all the different types of carbohydrates, so fructose, glucose, then there's different maltodextrins, which again need a different amount of water. You can really go into a rabbit hole, and for us, it's a big balance of keeping it simple, but at the same time, telling people to read and educate themselves about this whole topic, because then you can do special things.
Yeah, because first time I was looking into your products, I was like, fucking hell, a jungle, honestly. And you really, but then you realize there's actually a product more or less for every kind of like riding, meaning that, I'm doing an endurance ride today, meaning that there is less intensity. So the slow carb actually
it's
works
a good start,
better here.
Yeah.
So I'm doing heat training. Maybe I need more salt, and you have a heat training or a heat product, and then you have the fast carb, the high carb. There's a lot of different variation, which actually suits very well into what you're aiming for. And for me, that's the next level. That's more than the marginal gains, because now you can. Normally, I have people like, if the engine is just getting energy in some way, it's running, but you can actually fine tune and optimize this.
100%. Yeah, that's true. Like I would also say it's still a jungle, but that comes from, I would say, many brands out there. If they stick to one carbohydrate ratio, for example, they can already simplify their product range a lot. But as we have, especially in the drink mixes, we have 3 different ones. We actually also have a 4-to-1 ratio for everybody who's like, I don't know, recreational rider, or maybe just doesn't tolerate fructose that much. Then we have something for this person. But that makes it super complicated, having 2 different drink mixes in terms of 40 or 80 grams. And in each category, again, you can individually choose what your preferences are, what you're going to do on that day. And then yeah, sometimes some people say we focus too much on what athletes or like specific athletes need, but I truly feel like I like to offer everything, or to everybody I would like to offer a good solution for whatever they're doing in terms of training. And then they can do like a progressive carb fueling, starting like with 40 grams in the first hour, doing that with a slow carb, with slow releasing carbohydrate, because the body tends to, if it's active, there's no sugar spikes in the blood, because like the adrenaline and everything just cancels it out. But in the first half hour or something, or if you're at rest, then still, if you consume carbohydrates and the sugar spike goes up, then you still have kind of a reduced fat metabolism. And then, for example, slow carb with the slow releasing carbohydrate, it doesn't reduce the fat metabolism. So the first hour we would recommend using slow carb, and then it's progressing from 40 to 60 to 80. If you do 5 hours, go maybe 100 and 120 the last hours, but switch to power carb, for example. You can be really geeky about it. But again, like, as you say, there is always a simple solution that works more or less, but you can then with our product start to fine tune for the last percent and last marginal gains.
Yeah, for sure. And I just recommend that if you're going into the MNSTRY webpage, there's like a ton of information. But like if you really want to like dive into this, you please read about the information, because then all of a sudden it actually makes sense, and it's just like then the jungle is getting less or smaller. And then you just need to decide what kind of flavor you're aiming for.
Yeah. We still have a lot of work to do, as you say. Like at least we launched a new website, making it a little bit clear. Before that, it was actually a real jungle, and we still have a lot of work to do to make it even more simple. But I think people will find their way around.
For sure, yeah. So we're not going to talk about like your recovery products, because you also have a really phenomenal like recovery products, which like works absolutely great. I think, again, very natural, very stomach friendly and so on, easy to digest and so on. But the thing and then we also have like caffeine. So can we just like touch shortly about caffeine, because you have like different gels with different amount of caffeine in. What is the idea about that?
Also kind of different in terms of the release. So we have a 75 milligram, 100 milligram, and now 150 milligram caffeine gel. And so the one in the middle of the 100 milligram is matcha, and which kind of tends to have a slower release compared to
matcha. Is it
classic
kind of tea or?
Exactly, yeah. It's a tea, and then you see it, I think, in a lot of trend products. There's matcha latte.
Yeah, exactly.
It's I think it's green tea. Yeah, but that's not 100%. I'm not 100% sure here. But yeah, then it has a slightly slower release in terms of the kick that it gives the rider. And the first two gels. So actually, we have some work to do here. So the first two gels, 75 and 100 milligrams, are a 2-to-1 ratio, but the 150 milligram caffeine gel has a 1-to-0.8 ratio. And our goal is to, of course, have 75, 100, and 150, and then in the two ratios. So for every rider in every situation, you can kind of play around with how big shall the kick be in terms of caffeine. And then you should have a product for every scenario.
Okay. So the 150 milligrams caffeine, that's not matcha, that's more
lime.
That's lime.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know about that, but cool. So are we like the amount of caffeine? Can you say something about like how much you are like recommending to digest? And normally, my point of view, I would do like 150. Sorry for the noise, but anyway, I would do like 150 just before the start. I tend to also have like coffee and breakfast, but like do smaller amount like on race days, because I don't want to be too full up. And then like 10 minutes before the start, I do like 150 milligrams of caffeine. And then I actually race normally for a couple of hours, up to 2-3 hours. And then when I'm going into the final, like the final 2 hours of the race, let's say it's a 5-hour race or 6-hour race, I start like adding up caffeine again.
Yeah.
Because I know also like you would normally have like the spike of caffeine within a half to a whole hour.
Yeah.
And then it will actually last. That the half time of caffeine is, I believe, 6 hours. So you actually have like the quite a large amount of caffeine in your blood for quite a long time. And then I just like add up to make sure that the caffeine is still there in the final. Is that a wrong way of doing it?
I don't think so, no. The question is always, I think, a little bit individual, how much you want to do before the start and how big the gap is. And when you start to kind of experience a slight drop, even if it's not in blood level, but just also in feeling. I have to say, I don't have the actual knowledge to really touch on that, but I think the strategy that you just mentioned would work well. It's just, you have to define, there's a period of time where you have this drop, or you could have this drop, and then you have to counter it in a certain way. I think up to 600 milligrams you can consume in a race without any problems. That should be for everyone. I actually, not by mistake, but I packed the wrong gels for the Trucker 200. So in the end, I ended up like eating 700 or 800 milligram gels. So that was already a lot. And it also worked fine. So I think 500-600 is fine for everyone.
Okay. I was really angry after 2 hours of racing the Trucker because I didn't feel like super good for the first 2 hours. Also just like being a bit unbalanced, a bit of like health issue leading up to, anyway, a lot of excuses. So I just like was starting to eat the caffeine gels. So I was like pulling them out of my pocket in the end. I almost had like a gram of caffeine for 6 hours. And the funny part was like I felt really good, like especially in the last part of the race. I was going fast. I was having like a good feeling. I was really able to push hard on the climb as well. But I didn't have any stomach issues. I didn't have any cramps. Normally, like caffeine and cramps and stomach issues, like the big subject about that.
They come together sometimes. I agree. I also did 3 caffeine gels in the last hour race once, and I kind of was expecting something to happen. But nothing happens. I was like, okay, I'm taking a risk here, but it's going to be a bunch sprint and it's a good race for me. So I'm just going to do 3 matcha gels in the last hour roughly. But it worked out 0 problems. And the experience I had before with caffeine gels in the past, there was always some kind of problem with the stomach at a certain point.
So anyway, the next big subject is bicarbonate. And bicarbonate is for sure a big thing. And before you can talk about it, I will just like I've been using bicarbonate for a couple of years. I've been doing the loading thing, and you can like go a bit more into that. I've been having on and off issues sometimes with like a bit of like stomach. This is before I've been using MNSTRY. Because you also supplying like with the loading thing, and now a gel is coming up. Anyway, but I think it really plays a big role if you have a super intense start. So we can go a bit more into the theory behind bicarbonate in a second. But normally when I do the loading and doing a race with bicarbonate, I don't feel the chain that much for the first couple of hours. I really feel fantastic, especially on the hard part of the race, like the hard efforts, like the clearing capacity after. So I can do like several hard efforts just in a row. I would say I really need to pay attention to my power meter, because normally I can go a lot deeper, but it comes with a bill. So you can bury yourself the first 2 hours, and then the bill is coming, and then you're feeling quite shitty because you just been going a lot deeper. So my experience is like, if you do bicarb, you probably feel fantastic, but don't go too deep. Meaning that spend your energy wisely.
I feel like I've been using bicarb a lot because for the crits I do, it's like the perfect weapon, especially with the high VLA max. So a high lactate production, or with that a high H plus ion production that comes with that. So the one thing that bicarb does is it buffers the H plus ion. So it affects the pH value of the blood, giving you a little bit more of buffering capacity. And the first time I took it, I was actually really, really impressed, and it was a bit scary how big of a difference it is. Especially, I think, if you're doing something like a crit or a fast start in a race, and you tend to produce a lot of lactate. So that was actually the first supplement I took, and I haven't really been taking many supplements in my life, but that was like a big wow effect for me. And as you mentioned, there's one big thing: you tend to feel like Superman and race stupidly. So really keep an eye to the power meter, and then start to already reflect on, okay, I'm feeling good, but I have to keep my powder dry, because there's an attack going, you can just follow it. There's another attack going, and you can just follow it. And then in the end, you pay the price because, again, you expend more energy. You need to keep a closer eye also on fueling, because you're burning more carbs. So fuel even higher is one big recommendation. And it's kind of like you always have a good day if you take it, or most of the time, I would say, and you can kind of plan it. And it now sounds like some really strange substance, but bicarb is just a salt. That's also important. And of course, I totally understand. So far in sports, the preloading with bicarb has been done with powder or capsules, and especially swallowing capsules or pills in endurance sports feels shit, to be honest. Kind of,
Because
it's strange in the beginning. Like it just looks weird, and as an athlete you need some time to really get used to it. Again, it's just a salt, and then it buffers the lactate, but it's kind of a weird way, or it feels weird as an athlete to take 15 pills before an event.
So when you are doing a really hard effort, you are producing like a lot of energy, and with the energy it comes like a big amount of H plus ions and a lot of lactate. And the thing is, like, if you need to have these H ions out of the cell to actually be able to keep on contracting your muscles. So, and the lactate is actually helping with this process. But if you are having a high amount of bicarbonate in your blood, the speed of this process is actually going faster, and you can buffer more H plus ions in your blood, creating a better pH environment in the cell, so you can keep on like using your mitochondrial and so on. So everything is like, as soon as the pH drops a little bit, everything is just like going slower in the cell. Basically.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, you tend, of course, to find a higher lactate level in the blood. So I actually did a test where we compared like power outputs and then lactate levels. So we did a ramp test, I think. And in the end, the people, of course, went further, but they also could go to like 18 millimole of lactate instead of 14. And then, of course, you think it's a higher lactate, but it's not a problem, because the level is just in the blood, and it's not in the cell where it actually stops the muscle from working, but it's pulled out really quickly. And this is kind of this bicarb effect that you have, and it feels really nice racing with bicarb.
Because again, if the pH is more neutral inside the cell, intracellular, the cell keeps on working, and then the RPE, like the sensation you have in your muscle, even though your lactate is higher, is lower. So that's why you feel like Superman.
Exactly, yeah. And coming back to the topic of the preloading, so with around bicarb, they've been using it in endurance sports for a long time, like in the 70s and 80s. They started with the powder, and the big problem with bicarb is if the bicarb powder or the salt just reacts with your stomach acid, then you get problems. Then you get gastrointestinal problems. Exactly. And then there's new developments. So our capsules, for example, they are coated, so they pass the stomach and they only open in the intestine where they can be absorbed without any problems. There's also other brands, and I think we have to credit Morton for this because they kind of made. I think they have this pudding, and it's just a different way of consuming a bicarb product if it's a pudding instead of a pill. Just from the feeling the athlete has. The one downside it is, to be honest, really expensive, the pudding, compared to the pill. But it brought the whole topic back into the mind of athletes. And I think in the last 2 or 3 years, bicarb has become a really big topic in endurance sports. Whereas even though they had been testing around with it in the 70s, it was kind of not being done in the past for a long time. So there, of course, the industry itself has kind of pushed the whole topic forwards. And now with the product that we are launching, I think we can make it even easier or easily accessible and have like a product that solves a big puzzle for many athletes.
Yeah, and I totally agree. Like the loading phase is kind of scary because like if you are, so you need to actually consume between 0.3 and 0.4 grams per kilo body weight.
0.2 and 0.3. 0.3 is kind of the upper level.
Yeah,
I haven't really tried more, but that's kind of a safe area.
Yeah. So again, like for 70 kilo riders, that's like 20 grams of bicarbonate. So
one pill is 1 gram, and then it's already 20 pills.
Yeah. So if you're like standing there before the start, an hour before the start, you start with 20 pills in your hand, and you need to eat that. It looks weird. It looks like criminal.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the feeling you get. I mean, there is nothing criminal with it, but you have this feeling like pills in sports is something that doesn't really work well together, especially with the past that we have in cycling from the 90s and early 2000s. That's if.
So normally I divided the amount up in 2 doses. So I do like 60% an hour, 15 before, and then I do like a dose more 45 minutes before. Then I would have like a small, like a feeling of that, and then it's basically over.
You can actually stretch it even more. And so if you want to minimize these, it's a little bit of a burping.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel it's a funny burp, to be honest, because you can feel it's a really like CO2.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you want to minimize that, actually, I tend to do it 3 hours and 1 hour. But then again, the 60-40 split.
Yeah.
And then the burping is actually really, really minimal. And I don't experience any side effects from it. Make sure to eat something while consuming them, and then also fill up a lot of water. I think that also helps with the absorption process.
Exactly. No empty stomach. That's my advice.
Yeah.
And then you go race. So there is also a lot of sodium like combined with the bicarbonate. So you sometimes people are complaining a bit about like they are getting really thirsty out there. Do you need to actually have a higher intake of water during a bicarb race?
Yeah, I would recommend that. And also just keep an eye on what the conditions are. If it's really, really hot, maybe go more towards 0.2 grams per kilogram body weight. That could be an option, or just drink a lot because, it is salt. You get thirsty, and then that's again individual. Some people draw some weight. So the next day, you are a little bit heavier. That means for, let's say, our professional teams who do the Tour de France, I wouldn't recommend for a GC rider to do a high amount of bicarb the day before a high mountain stage. So that would be counterproductive. But that's just, again, details that once you have the knowledge, you can play around with.
Yeah,
But
because
just drink a lot with the bicarb.
I also think like normally you will like use a lot of salt out there also if it's warm. So I also think it could be a kind of benefit to actually the hydration thing. You might feel more thirsty but you still have like quite a lot of water in your body.
What you can also play around with. So with most of our products, we always have a high sodium and a low sodium version. So just if you take bicarb, just take a look at the rest of the gels you're, for example, taking, and pick the low sodium version, just that the overall sodium amount in a day is on a good level. That's also something that you could do.
Yeah, but normally, like if you're doing a 5 or 6 hours like tracker race, for example, I would say sodium, in my point of view, is not a case. You are using a lot of sodium and salt in generally out there, but it's mainly like the thing if you feel thirsty, and as in tracker, it was really dry, it was sunny, it was dusty as hell, so you were just like you needed more water just like to be like balanced or feeling so but anyway, so the afterwards, like as you said, I also experienced like the day after you could be like a kilo or 2 heavier from water retention. So my point of view is like, or my experience about it, if the race haven't been hard enough, so I really have been like burning off the bicarb and using the salt and so on, I feel more heavy the day after, which for me could be like a bit of like edge to, because I could be suffer from a migraine or a bit of headache. But so when we were doing the Santaval stage 2, I did bicarbonate, and I was like the stage was only 3.5 hours. So I put on some clothing afterwards, and I went for 90 minutes, 2 hours, like a easy spin with just like sweating the stuff out.
Yeah,
it's a thing in cycling. I don't know how much is actually working, but I felt like sweating afterwards was creating like the feeling I was looking for, and the day after I was again feeling fine.
Yeah, I think I personally, for example, don't draw too much water from bicarb, but I have teammates, for example, who have the same effect. Like there's a kilo more or 1.5 kilos of water that is just retained by the body.
So the thing with bicarb, we just talked about that it plays a big role for the very hard starts, and when you're going like you do the burst, also in gravel races, even though that it's a more easy start, you will have some really like surges where you go really deep, and the clearing capacity and like how deep you can actually go, well, bicarb will normally help you, but then the effect tends to actually fade out a little bit. Also because you're becoming a little bit more tired if you've been going deep, but the bicarb is also like getting a little bit out of your system.
So it has like normally it's in the system for about 3 to 4 hours, and again I think it's also individual, but that's roughly what science says, what the level of bicarbs stay up in the body. So this is always the case. You have an intensive start, like in the Tracker 200, for example, you have 3 climbs. You would really need the bicarb for it, but then there is a long flat passage where normally you're in a group and you just roll around for 2 hours, and then you have this intensive part again where you go with the next longer climb, and that's when the problem is you have been burning some matches in the beginning, maybe you haven't fueled properly, that's when and the bicarb is dropped, then you could kind of get in trouble. So even if you get the fueling right, and if you race sensibly, the feeling might be a little bit worse because you just lose this clearing capacity. And this is always like only if it's on the mind, but it's a problem for the athlete. And then you have to find a way to refill this bicarb level, so keep them up. And that's for example, you could see it in the World Championships last year on the road, where you have a video of Mike Woods kind of eating a pudding or whatever in the race, having to put his neck backwards and he can't see. So this is kind of like a big on the bike, exactly. So in the middle of the race, because or that it might have not been a refueling of bicarb. It might have been a strategic timing of bicarb to actually just start with it. But it's always been a challenge to do it so far. So, and especially for an athlete, like for most athletes who don't have access to a team car, it has been impossible to actually do it. So we've been really working on this because I know this feeling from the past, and I was that like we might just have to find something to keep it up. So we created this gel, which we are now launching. And I guess when this episode comes out, it's already live. And we found a way to encapsulate the bicarb, which is really important, again, that it's not reacting with the stomach acid, and putting it into a gel that has 40 grams of carbs and 5 grams of bicarb. So actually you can either strategically start fueling with bicarb. Let's say you have Unbound, and maybe the start isn't too intensive, but you really want to have it for the final. Then you can just start strategically fueling with 4 bicarb gels in the race, and then have the effect for the last 2 hours or 3 hours, for example. Or if you have an intensive start like the tracker, you can just take 2, it's like 1 per hour in the flat middle part, and keep the levels up so you feel really good when you go into the next climb. And this is kind of like, it's a really nice strategic angle, and it also helps getting the carbs in at the same time.
So you can do the preload thing if you want to, and then you can add in a gel after 3-4 hours to maintain the level of bicarb in the blood. But you can actually also use them for like reloading, as you can actually have them.
With no preloading, you could start the Unbound, then kind of race with, I would call it no filter, no better perception of the body.
Exactly.
You don't feel like a Superman, and you can maybe race a little bit more sensible. And then after 4 or 5 hours, you can just start taking 1 or 2 gels per hour, which is like 5 grams per gel, and then kind of move towards the level that you need, and then have the bicarb effect in the last 3 hours.
Wow.
So this is something that also a funny story that we have a partnership with Julian Alaphilippe, and I met with him, I think, before Liège, and asked him if he had any feedback, anything that was missing. And he was like, I just would really like to find a way to reload bicarb in a race. And I was really happy because that was something that we've been working on. So it's been a case that riders have been searching for this for a long time, and we feel that we've got this missing puzzle piece in terms of bicarb to prevent this drop in levels.
And what the good thing about it is, like, it's 5 grams. It's actually it's a quite big dose. It's not like 0.5. Because like 0.5 is nothing. I have seen other products out there who's like also claiming that they have bicarb in it, and what they basically does is just makes you more thirsty, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. And then the question is also, you tend to see it in drink mixes so far, but the question for me is in the drink mix, how is it encapsulated? And I don't think these products have an encapsulation system. So again, Morten did a great job creating a pudding where they encapsulated it. We've got it in real capsules, but there's always has to be a level of encapsulating. Otherwise, the bicarb could react with the stomach acid, and then it can be gone.
Vanish.
There's no effect. So this is, I can't 100% say that every drink mix, every buffer drink on the market doesn't have it, but to my knowledge, there isn't one. So that was the only way of kind of refueling bicarb in a race. Or you can just start taking a lot of pills in a race, which looks pretty shit on TV. And also, I don't think that is something that you would like to do on a bike, start eating pills. It's also logistically a nightmare. So,
I agree totally. So, Lennart, when is this gel released?
1st of June, it's going to be released.
Cool.
We've sent it out to some people to test. You've been testing it a little, and I was really happy to test it myself and actually experience that it works. That was really important because it was a working theory for a long time, and I tried it the first time in the Santabal, I also tried it as a preloading strategy at home for a Swift race. And yeah, of course, there's a couple of factors that are important. First of all, the product doesn't give you any stomach issues. That was really important. And then the second one, it does actually really deliver the bicarb to the body. So the effect was there.
The right
data. Yeah, exactly. And that was the two big tasks that we had to fulfill to make this product possible. And I mean, it tastes a little bit salty. I guess there is a bit better tasting product or gels in our product range, but it does the job. And sometimes I think also after all this sweet stuff, a salty gel might be kind of nice. And
I think that's absolutely no problem. I haven't been like, I agree, a little bit more salty, but like no big thing. And the good thing is like, you don't need to have the bicarb and have your energy. You get 40 grams of
two
energy.
in one.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like it saves times out there, and like having a hand away from the handlebar is always a key thing you want to minimize. So,
yeah, exactly.
So I'm really happy about it. And again, like, I'm a bit sad. It's coming out. I think you should be working internally a bit more, like maybe a couple of years before releasing it, because I think it's a really good weapon.
Yeah,
for sure. And well, are we pretty much around, Lennart? Or do you have anything more you would add?
No, I think we could have taken left and right into many topics, but I think it was good that we stayed.
Having this direction towards bicarb. Yeah. So we were also having the chance to talk about that. But I think it's really a key point here also for I hope the listeners will pay attention to is especially the hydration part. Like, there are, if you nail the amount of energy you want to like get in, make sure that the energy is also working. And the water and the hydration is the key there. Yeah. And especially like we are going into summertime and people are doing the llama mud and stuff like that. It's just like super important. And the thing, like trying to actually get like slow down with the concentration of your drink mix, meaning that like take it easy there. So creating a bottle with 200 grams might be like fine in your head that you are carrying 200 grams of carbs with you, but you want to make sure that
it arrives in the body and it's absorbed.
Exactly.
Now that's really good. And it's also kind of a cliffhanger to the next product that we're really excited about, and that will, I think, be released in July. So, and that has like a real focus on hydration, just also to focus on raw water retention. And I will make sure to send some test products to you, so you can give the feedback in the development process.
Because like in August we have a national round of the gravel race here in Denmark. There's like four like races where we're doing the last one in September, where we are hosting actually, and then we're gonna do the Swedish UCI. And also aiming for doing the Monferrato, the UCI in Italy, which last year was like 35 degrees. So
that can be helpful there.
That I hope so. So another secret weapon that's good. But just finally, we are working quite closely with you guys right now to actually bring in MNSTRY to VeloFit. Having like a big variety of products here as well. And until you can find the products on the MNSTRY webpage. I think it's mnstry.com. I'll put it in the short notes afterwards in this podcast.
We actually translated it into Danish. So, but if you find any spelling mistakes, we had a Danish local go over the wording, but if you find any spelling mistakes, just let us know.
I'll do that. So that's really great. But Lennart, thank you so much for participating in this podcast and bringing in all your knowledge. I think it's been really beneficial. There's a lot of like good stuff. I hope people will find interesting and learn from. So
thanks for having me. It's been great.
You're more than welcome. And I hope to see you out there. And good luck with the crit racing if you're doing more of this.
Thank you.
Okay.
Talk to you soon, Thomas. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. Ciao for now.
Ciao.